Imagine being forced to choose between your freedom and your daughter's life. That's the kind of decision no one should ever have to make. But that's exactly what happened to Miguel, an undocumented immigrant father in the United States. When his daughter fell ill, he did the unthinkable. He turned himself into immigration authorities, not out of weakness, but out of love. And what happened next touched the hearts of an entire nation. Miguel arrived in the United States silently, like so many others, crossing deserts and facing dangers, not for himself, but for her, his daughter, Isabella, who was only 2 years old at the time. Fleeing violence and extreme poverty in Honduras, he sought a place where his little girl could have the childhood he never had, with school, food on the table, and safety. Without documents, everything was more difficult. During the day, Miguel worked on onion and tomato plantations in the scorching California heat. At night, he cleaned floors in a restaurant. He slept only a few hours, his body exhausted and his mind always alert. Even so, he didn't complain. His greatest fear was being discovered and deported, leaving Isabella alone or forced to return to the misery they had once tried to leave behind. He saved every penny to pay the rent, buy second-hand clothes for his daughter, and above all, keep her in school. Seeing Isabella smiling, learning English, playing with other children, that was what gave him strength. He knew he hadn't won, but at least he was fighting in the right place. That was his dream. Not to get rich, not to achieve status, just to give his daughter a chance. It was on a morning like any other that fate decided to turn the page. Isabella was getting ready for school when she began to feel dizzy and unusually tired. At school, she fainted during recess. Miguel rushed to the hospital with his heart in his mouth. There, the doctors were blunt. Isabella had a congenital heart defect that had never been diagnosed. She needed urgent surgery, or she could die. The problem was that the treatment was expensive, very expensive. Without documents, Miguel had no health insurance, and the public hospital could only offer limited care. The alternatives were few. He sought help from churches, NGOs, and even community clinics. But they all said the same thing: you need legal authorization to access the system. With each no, Miguel felt more helpless. Time was running out. The doctors said that without surgery, Isabella had only a few months, maybe weeks. Despair set in, and that was when Miguel thought the unthinkable, turning himself in to the authorities. If he were arrested, perhaps his daughter would have access to some assistance program, or at least her case would attract enough attention for someone to help. It was a silent, lonely, and desperate decision. But for Miguel, it was simple. If she lives, I can lose everything. The next day, Miguel got up before sunrise. He made breakfast for Isabella, combed her hair, helped her put on her favorite shirt, one with stars on it, and took her to school. Then he went to the nearest immigration center. Upon entering, he went straight to the counter and said, his voice firm but trembling, "I am here to turn myself in. I only ask one thing: save my daughter." The agent was silent for a few seconds. It was something out of the ordinary. Miguel handed him a letter he had written by hand, explaining Isabella's situation. Inside the room, other agents began to read it. The news spread quickly through the hallways. A supervisor was called. The story was too powerful to be ignored. That same day, an immigration official anonymously shared the story on social media. Within hours, the post went viral. Thousands of people began commenting, sharing, and mobilizing. Doctors, lawyers, journalists. What was supposed to be a routine deportation case turned into a national solidarity movement. For the first time in a long time, Miguel felt that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. While Miguel was in detention, a group of volunteer doctors offered to operate on Isabella for free. A legal NGO contacted them offering legal representation to prevent Miguel's immediate deportation. The fundraising campaign to cover hospital costs exceeded $200,000 in less than 3 days. It was as if the story had touched a collective wound, the pain of seeing a father sacrifice everything for the sake of his child. In her hospital room, Isabella held a drawing she had made herself, a heart with the words, "To the best dad in the world." The surgery was scheduled urgently, and fortunately, it was a success. Days later, still recovering, she wrote a letter to her father saying, "I'm going to be fine because you love me so much that you gave yourself up just to see me live." When immigration officials read this letter, many were moved. One of them, with tears in his eyes, said, "This man does not deserve to be punished. He deserves to be honored." And so it was that in a rare turn of events, Miguel received not only his freedom, but also a temporary humanitarian visa. When he was reunited with Isabella, he fell to his knees, crying, while his daughter ran into his arms. What began as an act of desperation turned into a story of faith, love, and hope. Today, Miguel and Isabella live in a small apartment on the outskirts of Los Angeles. It is not luxurious. The furniture is simple, the refrigerator is still noisy, and the mattress on the floor is a reminder of those difficult early mornings. But there is peace, and more importantly, there is life. Isabella, now 7 years old, runs down the hall with her hair flying, laughing loudly, with that heart that almost stopped, beating stronger than ever. Miguel from the couch watches her every step with eyes full of tears, not from sadness but from gratitude. He knows that nothing was easy. He carried the weight of fear, uncertainty, and humiliation on his shoulders. But he also knows that in the end, a father's love was greater than any border. He still works hard, of course. But now he has temporary documents, earns a decent living, and is already making plans to go back to school at night. Isabella dreams of becoming a doctor, and when asked why, she replies with a shy smile, "I want to save children like me and take care of parents like mine." Those words echo in Miguel's heart, like a prize that no amount of money in the world could buy. Sometimes, when he walks his daughter to school, he remembers the day he had to turn himself in. He remembers the moment he walked through the immigration doors, his heart broken, believing that it might be the last time he would see his daughter. But now, with every hug he receives from her, with every "I love you, Daddy," whispered at the end of the day, he feels that it was all for a reason. Many call him a hero, but Miguel doesn't see himself that way. "I'm just a father," he says. "A father who did what any father would do." Still, his story continues to inspire thousands of families living in the shadows, reminding them that even in the darkest situations, there is always a light that can shine through love. In the end, what saved Isabella was not just the surgery, or the doctors, or the money raised. It was Miguel's courage to put her life above his own freedom. It was his gesture of sacrifice without guarantees, driven by a love so pure that it broke down even the coldest barriers of bureaucracy. And if this story reached you today, maybe it's not by chance. Maybe it's to remind you that sometimes the greatest power we have is not in our pockets, but in our hearts, and that there are anonymous people out there fighting invisible battles, performing silent miracles, just for love. Because in the end, heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear muddy boots, have calloused hands, and eyes that carry the weight of the world. And even so, they still smile, because they know they are fighting for something more valuable than anything else, the life of those they love.